So most of us, when we get into about middle school and we start learning about our own American Revolution and the founding of the United States, we learn about events like the Boston Tea Party and the battles of Concord and Lexington and Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, and the famous saying that accompanies the Paul Revere's Midnight Ride as "one if by land and two if by sea." Now, on the night of April 18th, 1775, before Paul Revere set out on his midnight ride, he had two of his fellow patriots, church sexton Robert Newman and Vestryman Captain John Pulling Jr. They each climbed the steeple to the Old North Church in the north end of Boston, and they each held one lantern high in the air for about less than a minute, just to signal to the militia over the Charles River in Charlestown that the British were coming by water instead of marching out across Boston Neck. Now, whenever I come to a historical site, there's always someone usually who knows way more about the individual history of a certain location. I always defer to their knowledge, and that is why today I'm joined by my new friend Julius, who is the visitor experience manager here at the Old North Church.
A lot of history pouring out of this church, so we're going to start exploring. Original donation box there for the church.
Oh, wow.
Get right close in there. You got the Christ Church, 1724.
The Rough Rider himself sat here and took in a service. It's pretty cool. President Ford addressed the country from here on the 200th anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride. General Gage was military governor for the Massachusetts colony, and this is where he and his wife would take in services here at Old North. From the height of the steeple, Gage could direct artillery fire and troop movements to almost anywhere in town. John Houghton Jr. participated in the Boston Tea Party at 19 years old as a member of the Sons of Liberty. This is definitely a man that you should look more into.
Just a little thing he did was he took into his possession the church silver service. This is the silver that would have been given as a gift from King George and used at services weekly at the church. He took it, brought it downstairs, buried it in the crypt underneath the church until after the siege of Boston was done. He just wanted to hide it from the British, and it still exists to this day.
One of the two lantern raisers sat right here in this pew. They held those lanterns up for, I believe, less than a minute. Joseph Warren Revere was named after Dr. Joseph Warren, who tasked his father, Paul Revere, to ride to Lexington to warn that the British were coming.
The copper on the dome at the State House, so like lots of artillery and howitzers and other wartime products, for the Army. Me and Julius were talking about was that both of Joseph Warren Revere's sons both died during the Civil War, one at Antietam and the other one at Gettysburg. So it just goes to show you the family of sacrifice and service to one's nation, especially in our first 100 years as a country. Here would sit the other lantern raiser on the night of April 18th, 1775. It says a lot about the man when the majority of the congregation were British loyalists. Julius pointed out to me a lot earlier, but that they would put hot coals in, and that would keep, essentially just start warming the box up for you and your family members. This being the place here where most of the enslaved black people would have been sitting, and free blacks as well up here a long time ago. This would have been probably just your most basic pine bench. And unlike the box pews down there, you weren't all locked in and cozy. There were no foot warmers. This would have been a really cold and kind of, uncomfortable place to sit up here for a long service on a Sunday. This is the general place where they would be sitting on a regular basis. General Boston and New England slaves were very literate. So coming to church was also a place where, one could learn to read or practice reading, be around others who were reading, looking at literature, even if that's just a hymn book or a Bible. But further down, the free blacks, they would probably come here by choice. They didn't have to come here, but there are records of numerous black families and other free blacks who came here on a regular basis, and who were baptized here and who were buried here. So there's always been a very, a tight tie between Old North and Boston's black community, free and enslaved. Chamber here, and this is where the MIT Guild of Bell Ringers comes on Saturdays to practice their melodies. They have their 8 members who will come through, each on a rope, and they will ring these ringing bells to certain patterns, I suppose, that they practice. I don't know all the details. Those were cast in Gloucester in 1744 from the Abel Ruddell, the Ruddell Company. It seemed that they cast thousands of bells in England, and others that may have made it to the States too. They were made for this church.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up my time here at Old North Church, and I don't want to say anything really about the crypt except for the fact that it's a unique experience unlike any other. Go on their website, which I'll put the link in the description box below. Get yourself a ticket for the crypt tour. Come right down here and check it out for yourself. It doesn't matter where you go in the Old North Church, is that there's history everywhere. You're surrounded by it. If you're ever in Boston, or if you live in Boston, go on their website, buy a ticket for one of their tours, and you will not be disappointed. One last thing, I would be remiss if I didn't express my thanks and my gratitude to Julius, who gave us a private tour of the place and also shed some light on some lesser known areas of Old North's history. A huge shout out to Jason Fishman. He really was the first one I came in contact with and allowed me to come into Old North and film an episode of Running Down History. I usually always end up forgetting to promote my own channel. So if you like this content, you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn that bell notification on. That way you always stay up to date on the newest episode of Running Down History. And I will see you guys next week at the same day, same time, same channel. Yeah, I would have a problem with public speaking, to be honest with you.